This is Breaking MedTech. I am Ryan. This is Cope. He's shorter than he looks. And today we are going to, he's so offended that I said that. And today we're going to talk about the fact that Cope and I think that most sales problems for small and startup medtech companies are messaging problems and not actually their product. Because their products are pretty good. They solve real problems, yet they can't sell anything.
That's right, Ryan. Messaging is one of the building blocks of sales. And if you're not doing it, not paying attention, and not working on it constantly, you're slowing your own progress. And if I may, I'm never offended. You can't hurt my feelings. I don't have any. I'm a sales sociopath. Let's continue with Breaking MedTech, though.
All right.
So let's start. How do you want to talk about this? How do we know messaging is important? Everybody says it is. Mm-hmm. Yet we see bad examples, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But what we do also see is actions not backing up the words. Like we think companies say, oh my gosh, messaging is really important. And then how much time have you spent on it? How have you practiced it? How have you field tested it? They're like, we don't really do that.
Yeah. So and you and I, we have our notes here, and I have something written down in our notes that is like it's not factually based, but it's like 80% sales teams spend 80% of their time explaining what your product does because the messaging is broken, right? And I think the concept is, for me and you, we talk about this all the time. Like, I look at messaging differently than you look at messaging. I look at a website and I can know right away that their messaging is probably really bad. Or maybe like one person on their team is really good at messaging. If I know that they've sold products, so like they've actually generated revenue, they're in, a couple $1 million, which really means that their founder or like a VP of sales is just really good at it. They just don't know how to convert it into marketing messaging, which is completely different than I think you look at it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, because we can say some are good, some are bad, some are but we need to tell them the framework within which we use to decide if something we think is good or bad or not non-existent. Right?
And can I ask you something? Because this is an argument that you and I have, which is, and when we have arguments, they're exactly what you think. It's like Peter fighting that chicken in Family Guy. So, it's exactly what it is. I am the chicken. So you often yell at me because you think that I overestimate what people think messaging is. Like, I know what messaging is. I think I've taught you what messaging actually is versus what you used to think it was. So can you explain to me what you think most of the general population, when I say the word messaging, thinks?
I think it's open to a lot of, like, I don't think people think about it. They're like, oh yeah, we're a really cool company. Mm-hmm. Here's what we are. Here's what we do, and kind of here's who we help. But it's ambiguous. It's not a punch in the. Like, I would describe it as a punch in the nose, right? So. It's not problem. Oftentimes, I feel like it doesn't describe the problem. It describes the product or company, if that makes sense. And I hope I'm giving you what I think. Like, and people think messaging, much like my response here, takes 3 or 4 sentences. And I would say I think it's shorter than that.
Yeah,
I think it's distilled up to its elements. And I have some examples that I think are good. You might dislike them. I'll be curious. But I think, like, I've seen the best salespeople, when somebody's like, hey, so what do you sell? Their response is like, bang, bang. And it's messaging, right? It's messaging because they're planting a flag in that person's brain. And we can think of some examples and do some examples. But I just think people think, oh, it's what we talk about all day long. And it is.
Yeah.
But it's ambiguous. If you turn to your buddy and say, hey, Jim, here's what we do. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, what does that mean? I need more explanation. So then I would say that tells you your messaging is a little.
Yeah. And I think when if I say to somebody like, hey, you need to fix your messaging, like their first thought is like, what do you mean our tagline? Like, we got to fix our tagline. Like they think it's like something very specific. Like, oh yeah, they don't realize that it's everything that they're like. It is very ambiguous because it is everything that you are saying.
Yep.
But my point would be that like the goal should always be to make it, like you said, as tight as possible. Can you like, is it 1, 2, 3? Somebody knows exactly what you do, how you help, how you solve their problem.
Let's give them examples.
Okay.
Like, I'll give you one right now. Right. I'll use mine.
Okay.
People ask me what I did, what I was doing with this consulting, and I quickly realized that I had to describe it in a succinct, hopefully impactful way. So I would say, I'm the value analysis whisperer. I help small med device companies help get their products approved in ambulatory surgery centers, hospitals, and health systems. Partly because some of the early phase companies I was talking to, when I said I help you get your product approved, they thought I meant with the FDA. I was like, whoa. I need to.
He doesn't know anything
people,
about that. Yeah.
Right. And I was too far ahead of myself. I was thinking everybody knew what I meant and they didn't. Right. So that's kind of a tagline.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of messaging, right? But tell me, is that messaging?
Yeah, that's messaging. Opinion? Yeah. Okay. And it's messaging because it solves a problem. And then I would tell you, like, if you really think about it, I think when we talked about messaging last time, I said, like, have a North Star. Like, that's your North Star. Is like, you help people solve problems, right? Or you help people get products approved in healthcare facilities, like right, ASCs, hospitals.
Yep.
That's what you do. All right. And what I know, because we talk about it and I see your marketing and I see the stuff that you do, I just got an email from you a couple minutes ago. Automated email. Good for you. That your messaging in your marketing email, if I read it, which I did, and I asked myself, does this align with, I'm the value analysis whisperer. I help small medical device companies get products approved at hospitals, ASCs. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So your messaging aligns with what you're doing. And I know that you put a lot of thought into what you're doing, right? And when I look at groups that like, or when I talk to groups, or if you're sitting here and you're listening to this and you're like, well, I think my messaging is good, right? It'd be like, what are signs that your messaging isn't good? Because let's be specific.
Right.
If I have a bulleted list here, why your sales rep shouldn't be building a pitch deck for every single call, right? That's a sign that your messaging is probably not tight enough.
And I'm going to anticipate a sales team's argument with you. And I think they might say, yeah, but we're trying to tailor it to the customer we're talking to. And I would say, I get that. We're not saying you don't do that. But what we're saying is, if every message meeting you walk into and they say, so what do you guys do, or what's your problem or product? This is where your message has to be like, bang.
Yeah.
Right? Like right there. You can change your slide deck around. But when Ryan says building their sales, like that's specifically what he means is I think the best way to describe it, and I'm applying it now, is when you walk out of the room and close the door, they say, "Oh, those guys do this."
Oh, that would be
that's right. That's the barometer.
And another good one would be like, you have wrong fit leads, because that's a real thing, and you get so far down the sales path where they're going like, I think you do this, I think you do this, I think you do this, but because you've never really explained it correctly. Your leads think you do one thing or you offer one value, and then you actually don't. You have endless explaining. So I have sat in rooms where I've seen founders over the past 6 years, or sales leaders, or whatever, presidents at these companies try to explain to a customer, we bring them a lead, they come in, they come do their sales pitch. We're really acting as like an SDR, a sales development rep in those situations. And then they come in and it's just sitting there with like your hands underneath your legs, squeezing your legs because you're like, oh my God, this is a train wreck. Or your sales decks are 50 pages and bloated with features. Usually means that you don't have your messaging. So like those are real world examples that I would say if you're sitting here going like, well, is my messaging bad? Like if you're think about what I just said to you. Think if you constantly have to explain yourself. So like those are the things. So when you see someone who has good messaging, and then we'll get into your examples. When you see someone have good messaging, like what are the benefits of that? Like don't use you as an example. Like think about like a rep that you've been around who really has nailed what the product market fit is, what the messaging is, how to describe the problem, how to describe the solution.
Well, the outcome is they sell more in more places faster because the people who they have the problem that this product or service solves, get it immediately. Like you're not having to say, well, wait, do you work over here or could you? Now you get some of that because you of course you will, but you start to see you're getting the same questions every time, and they're leading indicators to how you're going to. They're now in their heads. They're asking questions that solve problems in their brains. Not, I'm not. What do you do this? It's more like, hey, can we do this with yours? You can almost hear it in the inflection, and those reps can automatically start to predict whether they're going to win or not, right? Because like you can see like flags start going up, going, this is going to help. This will help them, and they start to say, could we use this on these? Like you can hear it in their voice, and you're saying yes or no, but you're saying yes. You can see they're like, oh my gosh, that'd be awesome because they know what you do. Now they're trying to figure out like, well, you might be able to help us. Can we apply? I have a couple of buying questions is really what they are. But I hope I answered your question. Like when they get what you do, they then know how they want to use you, or they start to ask questions about how they're going to use you versus like these ambiguous they're not even curiosity. They're literally trying to frame what you do in their brain. And we don't want that. We want that already have been done with the messaging.
Can I ask you a leading question?
Yeah, please.
I'm a lawyer at heart. Do you feel like a lot of companies just think small, they don't even have a sales team. Or if they do have a sales team, it's just like 1099s. Do you think that a lot of them just think to themselves, no, this is just the way it is. Listen, we're a small startup. You don't understand. This is just what we have to do. Because I get that vibe from them a lot.
I think that's a prevailing attitude. And I get it. And to an extent, we are going to figure our messaging out as we go. And like using my example, I found I basically said, I help you get your new product approved. Right? And people thought I was FDA. No, better make sure they know where. And I would say, get it through value analysis. And places would say, oh, well, we're going to ASC, so it doesn't really matter. And I'm like, well, they do it too. Right? ASCs do value analysis. They just don't call it that. So my messaging has evolved because the questions and responses I was getting were showing me they didn't have clarity on what I was talking about as well. And they had a preconceived notion that I believe is inaccurate. So my messaging has evolved, but I've tried to keep it as short and sweet as possible, but still answer those first two or three misconceptions or misperceptions that I felt like people had. So we know it's going to evolve. Of course it's going to evolve. But you have to start somewhere. And I mean, I can think of a perfect example.
Okay.
Well, I won't. I will name the company. Like this Arbutus Medical Company is really cool, right? Now I know, Ryan, I'm breaking my own rule of talking about orthopedic companies, but like
I wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah, I know, but they're cool dudes, and I like them. And I think their message, from listening to them, I had to ask them what they do, how it works. They explained it really well, but most customers aren't really going to do that. You know, and I think if they hired me today and said, Cope, you got to go sell this. I've told them this. I would say, you know, we make traction simple in your emergency department, right? And what people are going to do, and I have a friend, Chris Cole, who would call those foot stompers. Like the person you're talking to goes, say it again? How do you get them to stop? Because you've just disrupted a pattern in their brain. Cole says to people, hey, want to see something cool? And people are like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, whoever says no? Who says no? Right? Like, it's hilarious. It's a great line.
That is...
But you then fight the... But, like, I think that's their messaging. Because then people are going to go, oh, you know, and then I think your real sweet spot is we make traction in the ER or ED simple. Right? And then they're like, ours is complicated. We should call these guys. And they can see it on a business card. They can see it on a marketing piece. They can see it on a website. And their reps come out and say, hey, listen, I'm Mark Copeland from, I'm representing Arbutus Medical. Here's what we do. We make traction in the ER or ED simple. And if people say, well, ours is really simple already, I would say, okay, cool. I don't know that we're going to be able to help you.
Yeah, I don't know. And that actually is fine.
Yeah.
Because then you don't waste time on them.
Wrong. Right. But you stay in touch with them. But if they go, oh my God, ours is awful, right? And then you find who totally recognizes that they have a problem. It might not be the people you're talking to, but your message, you close the door and they go, oh, those guys, you know what those dudes do? You know who you should talk to, Cope. We're cool here, but you should talk to that health system because we rotated over there and they're a nightmare and a mess. And you're like, huh. Because now they know what you do, right? So, like, I love those guys. I love their solution. I think there's a massive problem they solve, but that's messaging. They're getting there, right? Do I have that?
Yeah, and I always like my rule of thumb would be you should have. So I might do it a little bit different, right? You should have when you say something, they should go how. So like, what's your value analysis thing? What is it? Value analysis whisperer. I help
small med device companies get their products approved in ambulatory surgery centers, hospitals, and health systems.
Okay. How? Right. Because,
right. And then I tell them what
and
I
then
do.
you tell me exactly what you do. So like, for Arbutus, I would maybe do something like, simplify, ER traction deployment. Okay. How do you simplify it? And like, right. And then you could have a conversation about it. Or, if you wanted to leave with a problem, you'd be like, how ER traction is really difficult. You got to go run around the ER and find a bunch of different things and you never have everything, right? We solve that. How? We sell packs, sterile packs that have everything you need to do traction in the ER in the pack. Oh,
I like that you brought that up because like you realize what you just did. I was saying what we do. You actually went to the problem and said, here's the problem. And then we say, here's what we do. And they say how.
Yeah.
Right? I actually like that better.
You know what I would do for all those people, trade show season's almost over. But for all those people who are in like trade shows or doing trade shows or, you're just thinking like, this is like the type of stuff that when somebody walks up to you in a trade show, because this happens, especially at the small booths, right? You have no brand recognition. And sometimes you'll have some real curious doctors, nurses, admins, whoever, who walk up and go, what do you guys actually do? Instead of start talking about like, well, we synergize, blah, 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 and you're just a bunch of gibberish and they're just like the teacher from Charlie Brown. They just hear, like, start with the problem. You know how, like, if you're at a trauma, because I've been there before, like you're at a trauma meeting, right? And you have a booth and a doctor comes up and they go like, hey, what do? You'd be like, hey, when you go to the ER and you have to do traction and you're just running around all over the place. You never have everything that you need at once. We fix that. I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, they're going to go, how? Right? That is messaging. And that's,
I like that.
it's doing it because you, so I wrote a note here. Your messaging should explain the pain. I explained the pain. It should explain the urgency. It explained the urgency. And then the outcome. Now, I didn't explain I said we fixed that. Okay. And then they're going to ask how, and then you're really going to explain, like, how do you actually fix it? And you're going to give them the real outcome. But I like that. What I just said, what did that take me? 10 seconds?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm super gifted. No, it's like 10 seconds to explain what the thing is. And I didn't go on which is hard for me. I didn't go on for 2.5 minutes. And if anyone knows me, I talk nonstop. So like this, that's amazing.
Your skills are exceeded only by your humility. Right?
Obviously. Really smart.
But I like that. I'm going to ask you to give that outline again.
Okay.
But I'm going to add on something to it, not to the outline, but to the goal. This is what a lot of people who don't do sales don't get. Marketing does implicitly, right? Is my job when this doctor comes out to the booth out of the satellite side and says, "Hey, what do you guys do?" Right? Is to do what you just said. But my end point is not convert them, convince them, persuade them, hypnotize them. Again, I always joke, if I were a hypnotist, I wouldn't be in sales. I'd just be out hypnotizing people because God only knows what I'd be doing. But my goal is to earn another 60 or 90 seconds of attention and interest and curiosity, right? And the way you do that is to be credible. And you described it perfectly, right? You described it like you've stood in emergency departments and gotten the pager goes off and go, "Hey, we got a patient with this kind of fracture coming in," or whatever it is, right? Or gunshot wound or blah, 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 whatever it is. You sound like you know what you're talking about. You're credible. You have my interest. You have my curiosity. My goal is for you to then understand how we do it because you can then make a decision. I really like your outline, and I want people to understand we're not going to convince them at the booth in Las Vegas. What we're going to do is attract them and intrigue them or send them on their way if they don't have the problem, right?
Yeah.
But that's the key to messaging is what do you do? What problem do you solve? Not in that particular order. What problem do you solve? What do you do? How do you do it? And then let the customer say, and I have that problem, right? And that's why you were talking about those leads being dead enders and you spend all this time and you find out because you were ambiguous. Though you get a lot less that on the marketing side. And on the sales side, back to your point, your reps hit a lot bigger, more faster, higher prices because everybody knows what the heck the problem is and what you do because your messaging's strong. Let's give some examples of good messaging if we have it or bad messaging. I wrote some down but could you give that framework one more time for the way you look at what's good messaging so somebody could listen to this and go, "Hey, I'm going to try this. I'm going to use Ryan's method. Let me go look at messaging." So somebody else's. What would you say?
Pain, urgency, outcome.
Okay.
And what most people do is outcome. And they even do outcome poorly because they do feature outcome, not benefit outcome.
So that's not 3 bullet points. That's 3 steps in order.
Yeah.
Right? Pain. What was the U?
Urgency.
Urgency.
Outcome. Right. And there's pain,
urgency, outcome.
And that's kind of like when I think about it. And a lot of people don't feel comfortable doing the pain because they just don't feel comfortable describing customer pain. They typically don't like urgency because urgency means you have to start describing emotions and feelings. And we know that's the stress part of it of going, and the outcome, like I said, they do it, but it's just very feature rich and not benefit rich.
Well, it's interesting. I just listened to a really smart guy who's been in sales for a long time. I admire him. And he was saying you have to go places where you get uncomfortable. He was talking about it in this sort of setting. He's like, is where impact starts to happen. He's like, if you go, and it's funny, I wouldn't have thought of people being uncomfortable with that, but it does sort of make sense. But I would say if you get uncomfortable, if you're in a spot where you're uncomfortable describing the pain, Ryan's P in that pain, urgency, outcome, and then I would put at the end of it curiosity or interest, right? You're probably in the right spot. And I love that. I actually really like that. I think that's a really good formula, and we should put that in the notes so if people want to remember. Because frankly, I learned when I'm on these things with you about this stuff that it's obvious in my brain, but it's not a formula or it's not a way to do it. So I like that. So let's go through some. Do you want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead. No, you go.
Okay. So, and by the way, just as an aside, we have no conflict of interest with these companies. I do a little bit of work with Arbutus, but like nobody's paying for this. This is just me and Ryan talking about things we know and are interested in and use them as great examples. So like one company I know says their sort of message is orthopedic surgical tools. And I would say we kind of know what we know what you are, but we don't understand like there's a billion of these things.
I actually don't care. I know which company this is and it'd be like, I don't. Nice company. I actually don't. I don't know what you do, right? Because that's so vague. That could be like, well, what are we talking about? Like,
in their defense, they're changing it, right?
Yeah.
But I would say like that's an example of people like, I kind of know what they are, but, but you don't know what they do. You don't know you don't know what problem they solve, right?
Yep.
Here's one that I liked, and this is a company I did some work with, but I really like their messaging. All-in-one software for surgery centers. I like that. Like, it's good. Is it world-class? I don't know. Ryan's the expert in messaging on here, although I'm pretty good at it. Here's one I really like. Capsule endoscopy made easy. Right?
That I like.
Yeah, that's a really good one, right?
Yeah.
And here's one back into the orthopedic world that I don't really care for. A step ahead as the leader in 3D bunion correction.
So my question for you, because I don't know what company this is, and don't think it's lost on me that you keep bringing up ortho companies after you yell at me about it, but do they, how many products do they have? Do they have one product or do they have a lot of products?
Good question. I don't know.
Okay. Because if they have a lot of products, which I don't think they do because that's super niche, 3D bunion correction. If they have a lot of products, I don't personally agree with, I would probably word it differently, but I could see why they would go in that direction if they were like, well, we don't want to specify on one thing that we do. But assuming that they have one product, which they probably do, or one platform, I would go like, that's way too vague. Because a step ahead as the leader, who's calling you the leader? What does that mean? How does that benefit me? I don't know any of those things.
It's a little braggy versus problem-y based, right? But I would say at least, if nothing else, you close the door. You know what?
At least I know they do 3D bunion correction.
Right. Yeah. So like I use these examples of good and meh, bad ones. Like here's one that I don't necessarily care for. A solution for high efficiency surgical workflow.
What kind of are you consulting business? Are you a software? Are you like what?
Yeah.
What?
It's like Google Maps getting me into town, but not telling me what address to get to. How do I get there? Right? Like it's very vague.
I would tell you, like, because assuming these are all on their websites is what I'm guessing, is like when you have even with all-in-one software for surgery centers and a solution for high efficiency surgical workflow, they better have one hell of a subheader. And a subheader, for those who are like, what the hell is he talking about? A subheader is like when you look at the big text on the first section of a website, the tiny text underneath it, that's a subheader. They better have, because if I look at like all-in-one software for surgery centers, I think to myself like, all right, but what are we talking like scheduling? Like, are you a true all-in-one, right? And it like, is it really, streamline your revenue, scheduling and operations.
Right. It's getting more specific.
Yeah.
I agree.
So a solution for high efficiency surgical workflow, if underneath it you have a killer subheader where you're like, surgical consultants who blank, blank, blank with over 50 years of experience, right? That's not, I'm just making this up off the top of my head. Like, all right, that's a little bit better. But if we're just going like a solution for high efficiency surgical workflow, it's way too vague. And if I've never heard of you before, now I have to quote Donald Miller, burn calories to figure out what you're doing.
Right. So we'll wrap up this way, that messaging is important. We pulled stuff off of websites, and you may think, oh, that's website marketing. Now, that's like your sales pitch too. Like when people say to you, what do you do? What are you? And you're a salesperson, you want to be able to do the same thing. Say, look, here, you know the problem? Yeah. And here's why people are trying to solve it. Here's the urgency. This is what we do. And be very specific, because, yes, some people might go, oh, I don't think we need that. Okay. That's fine. Right? You at least know where to go in the conversation. But if they say, oh, wow, that sounds great, because now they know what you do. They don't have to burn calories to figure out what you do. You don't want the human brain to burn calories to figure out what you do. It's designed to recognize pattern interruptions, which is something different. Want to see something cool, right? Or this is what we do. And if you go, oh, that's interesting. Now you got their attention. Right. Any final thoughts on this?
Yeah, that would be like the website comment would be like, it's just usually, I don't know. I've talked to enough groups. You've talked to enough groups. I've been around long enough that like more often than not, there is a correlation between your website is not great and your message, your sales messaging is probably off, right? It's very rare that, it's one is horrible and your other one is just spot on. Yep. And what I would tell you is like, the goal should be, you should be creating messaging and you should really care about your messaging and you should think about it. And the idea should be that like, you should have a, like I talked about with Arbutus, you should have something that you could give to your worst rep and they can go say it to someone. And they're like, oh my God, because that's the type of stuff that helps. You're the reps that struggle, who maybe are really good at like the technical aspect of it, but they just don't know how to open a conversation. Caring about your messaging fixes that. So no, that would be my big thing. Is like you it's something you have to care about because it's not going to fix itself. I promise you. If it's not like some like self-correcting thing. That's not what happens here. Right. Someone has to be deliberate about it.
Yeah, our takeaways are messaging is very important. Our framework on how to look at your messaging. Mm-hmm. I really like Ryan's framework, and I would say the final part on this, if the framework does those three things, are you generating curiosity or interest? You're trying to earn the next 30, 60, 90 seconds.
Yeah.
Like that's literally what you're trying to do. And then I love what Ryan said. If you teach your salespeople this and put it on your website, the same message is going to everybody, and you can adjust them as they improve, like mine had to. Mm-hmm. I think it's hard to get it right the first time.
Yeah.
It iterates, and you have feedback loops. So I love that, Ryan. So I know, here's our call to action, and I think Ryan's really, really, really good at this. I think I'm okay. Ryan's really good at it. You had a call to action on here that if somebody wants to test their messaging, what should they do?
If you want to test your messaging, DM me your one-liner, and I'll tell you if it's working. Or if you really want to, DM me. I'll schedule a call with you, and you can kind of go through it with me, and I'll tell you, yeah or no, you got to tighten that up, right?
Yeah. Ryan's really good at it. This has been Breaking MedTech. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.